So there are a lot of things for us to consider as principals as we think about what our districts have to do in regards to buses. First, we have to consider, who is going to be bused for the district. And so the rules that the state lays out are not every student has to be given the opportunity to be bused. Those that fall under the IDEA and the ARD committee that have a specialized written requirement, those are legally required to be bused. But a district can choose to bus students that they're not necessarily required to bus, and that's okay. A district does get funding from the state. They have to request that funding, and they can get funding for their regular routes, the special routes that they have, the CTE routes, and even the private routes that they have. A board can actually contract with a local mass transportation company, organization, and as long as they're following the state's guidelines, they can contract that driving out. I thought that was really interesting. A school district can even charge for that transportation for those students if the board chooses to do that, and so they would have to outline that and let that be known publicly that was happening and how much. It does say that school buses have to have certain requirements, and so it depends on how new the school bus is. A school bus that is newer than 2017 has to have the 3-point harness, the seatbelt requirement. But if it's older than 2017, it's not required to have those. And it does say that school boards can have a public meeting and say that this is too much for our budget, that we can't afford school buses with those types of seatbelts, and so we're going to forego that for our district. As far as requirements for drivers are concerned, the requirements that the state and our district have, because they're identical, are that you have to be 18 years old to drive the bus. You have to have the special license required, required by the Department of Transportation. You have to, in that case, obviously pass the test, the written portion, the driving portion. And as well as that, you have to pass a background check to prove that you don't have certain kinds of problems on your record. You have to have a clean driving record, essentially. And so they check back as far as 10 years for things like intoxicated-related accidents, manslaughter offenses, and that kind of thing. For school bus drivers, they have a drug testing component that you're subject to, and that's ongoing. And so there are several things that you have to have at the beginning: the licensure, the age requirement, and yet some of those things that are ongoing are like the drug testing requirement and that clean report that is on your driving record. Behavior is a big deal on buses, and that again goes back to the principal. You have control over the training that is necessary for those bus drivers that will help make sure that they get where they need to go safely. The students are not allowed to sit on the floor. They're not allowed to stand in the bus, and they're not allowed to be seated anywhere other than where they're supposed to be, where that's legally safe. There's a requirement that they have to only have a certain number of students or less that the bus legally permits, and if that number is less than 15, then the school district doesn't even have to use a bus. Actually, they can use a passenger vehicle. So that's about it. Thanks, guys.